Check 1, 2.
Curious about real estate?
Yes!
Then you've come to the right place. Get the knowledge you need, get over the fear, and get started. This is the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show with your host, Michael Quarles.
Hello everybody, Michael Quarles with the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show. Today we have a scenario question. It looks like it's a juicy one that I'm going to try to help with. And remember, if you have a question, send it to support@michaelquarles.com and Riley will get it to me. In the meantime, don't forget about the coaching program. It is $247 a month or a one-time fee of $1197. 6-month program. We have 3 calls a week, and then we have an individual one-on-one a month, which is pretty cool. And we go over a bunch of stuff to help further your career in real estate investing. Here we go. I have a lead that is considering offers from 2 other investors along with me. Based upon my simple online research, the property is worth roughly $100,000. He claims to have had 2 recent appraisals from deals that fell apart, valued at $126,000 and $96,000. Boy, that's a big spread for appraisals. He says the other investors have offered $75,000 to $80,000, and he estimates needed repairs to be $15,000. These numbers don't add up, but as of yet, I have no way of seeing this property as I work virtually and there are no photos available online. Maybe the investors see value that I don't. Maybe they are desperate. I don't know. He wants only cash, is not opening to financing options. This is an inherited house with no loans, liens, or mortgages. I see that I can go 2 ways here. 1, offer competitive pricing and negotiate down to the BPO and or numbers do not agree with the seller's higher appraisal. 2, make a more realistic offer considering the repair costs as a backup offer and hope the others fall through. I am siding with option 2. Might you have anything to add to this? Well, let's pull that apart because it's 4 or 5 paragraphs. So I have a lead that is considering offers from 2 other investors. Here's what I always tell people when they say that to me. I ask them very bluntly, because you guys, maybe you're not aware, but I'm kind of blunt. I ask them, why? What about those investors made you believe that they couldn't follow through with their offer, which didn't allow you to accept it? So basically I'm saying you had 2 offers, but apparently you know that those people couldn't perform or you would have accepted those offers. So that's not even a relevant point in the conversation that we're having. You would not be talking to me if in fact you had other people that you thought were competent and wanted to buy your house. You would just stop looking for people. You would have solved your problem. So you know as well as I do that if you had these people, then there was something about them that you didn't think, and it's not the value, it's the fact that they gave you a value that you knew deep down inside was too much, they couldn't follow through with, or they're just make-believe people. Maybe you're just making stuff up. But I'm gonna call the seller on that conversation. Because again, if they were legitimately good offers, the seller would stop looking. I mean, when you find your keys, you find your keys. You don't continue to look for something that's lost. And in this case, he says he claims he has two offers and he has 2 appraisals. So here's my question on the appraisals. If in fact, let's assume for a second, it's been in escrow twice or closing twice with 2 other buyers, and you have 2 appraisals, and those buyers went away, and the appraisals were 126 and 96, which is a long way apart. Let's face it. When you're only talking 100 grand here or 120 grand here, that's a long way apart. Typically, you can see an appraisal is about a 5% spread. So if I had an appraisal come in at 100 and I needed it to be 105, I could the appraiser can justify doing a recalc and give me 105. But you can't realistically say and believe for a moment that someone thought it was worth $96,000 and then someone else the next day thought it was worth $126,000. Not in our market. So there's something happening here. Now the appraisals could be years apart. Who knows? But he says too recent, and having the two recent appraisals tells me there's something wrong with the property, because two people that, you wouldn't get appraisals unless you wanted to buy something. And if you got an appraisal and it wasn't what you thought it was, then you would not buy it. And there those appraisals are. And foolishly, maybe the investors gave the seller the appraisals. The only time I give the seller the appraisal is if, in fact, they pay for the appraisal. So if I've spent $400 getting an appraisal, and then based upon those numbers, I have to back out because the seller won't renegotiate, and the seller says, "Can I have a copy?" No, you can't. Not unless you give me $400. It's my $400, my information. You want my information? It costs you $400. It's crazy to give stuff away, people. So there's all kinds of red flags within the first paragraph, and so I'd be really conscientious about following forward. And then the second one, he says he had other investors that offered him 75 to 80, and that he estimates repairs to be 15. Now, let's use the low and the high. So we have a low appraisal of 96, and we have a high offer of 80. The repairs, that's not relevant in this conversation, because the appraisals would be an as-is. Unless it's like new construction, then it's going to be after repair. Or if on a resale, there's work that the appraiser knows is being done, then they're going to appraise it on a future value. But in most cases, the appraisal is going to be in an as-is basis, taking in consideration the needed repairs. So the $96,000 as the low appraisal is an as-is. And then the offer of 80, which is the highest offer from an investor, ridiculous, by the way, ridiculous. Any investor out there just trying to make 16 grand on a gross perspective, from a gross perspective, is absolutely insane. Insane. It doesn't even, well, it kind of makes sense if it appraised for 126 and they offered 80, but it absolutely doesn't make sense at 96 and they offered 80. But if they offered 75 to 80 and he has appraisals at 126 to 96, something's wrong there, because if I have an appraisal at 126 and I made an offer and he accepted that offer at 80, well, what is 80,000 of 126? So 70% of 126, I'm going to do math real quick in my head. 70 times 100 is 70, 70 times 20 is 14, 70 times 6 is 42. So 80 something, 88. So at least we're at 70% we're there, probably there at 65%. So there's something there that's not being told to you, that's not the truth. Let's look at the third one.
Thanks for listening. We'll be right back. Are you running out of leads? It's time you tried Yellow Letters at yellowletters.com. Get motivated seller leads through yellow letters, postcards, zip letters, typed professional letters, greeting cards, door hangers, and business cards. Yellow Letters is a full-service marketing company created with your success in mind. Get the personal attention you need to get your direct mail campaign started, and get in touch at yellowletters.com.
And we are back in 3, 2, 1.
Third paragraph. These numbers don't add that. Yeah, they do not add up to me either. And you mentioned that you can't, because you work virtually, you can't see the property. And that's not necessarily true. You can see the property. You can require, keep in mind, we are the doctor. We are the ones solving the problem. The patients aren't solving the problem. We are. We have a patient that has, and I know I call it a patient, but it's really a property seller who wants to sell, needs to sell, has to sell a property. We're going to solve their problem by buying it. They're not solving our problem by selling it to us. We're not in the problem, like we need our problem solved business. We are in the business of solving problems of other people. So in a case like that, I would demand that they send us pictures. What we say, what the Alexes say, for me anyway, the last question is, or statement is, when I get done with this phone call, I'm going to send you an email. Can you attach to that email and reply to it pictures of you inside of your house and the outside of your house? So that when we call you back to buy your house at whatever time we set, we'll have the information we need about your property. So we're asking for pictures at the very end of the conversation. We need those pictures. And if someone says, I can't, I'm not going to send you the pictures, well, then they're not a seller. They're not in urgent mode. They don't qualify. They've just disqualified themselves and, went on their merry way. That's okay. Can't buy them all. If seller doesn't want to participate with you, do not change your business model for them. They have to change themselves for you. That's how it works. And someone that says they can't send you pictures because maybe they're virtual too, well, that's a bunch of you-know-what. Everybody, if you wanted to sell something bad enough, you would figure out how to get a picture to somebody who needed that picture in order to justify purchasing it from you. You call somebody. Okay, so let's just assume you don't know anybody to call. Why don't you call a real estate professional? Hey, Joey at Century 21 or wherever, can you go out and take some pictures of a piece of property? No. Okay, well, I was going to give you $100. Oh, I do it for $100. Great. Okay, well, let's take that all the way down to the most minute. Who could do it for you? Who? Just come on, let's think outside of the box. How about an Uber driver? How about getting on Uber and saying, scheduling a cab or Uber and just telling them, hey, all I want you to do is drive by this property and take some pictures and send them to me, and I'll pay you. I don't know if Uber does it, but I bet you a taxi does it. In fact, I know a taxi will do it. So why don't you call the cab company if Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you needed to get pictures of something. Man, let's get the sellers to think outside the box. Let's help them think outside the box, because if they needed to sell a house and that was a requirement, they'd figure it out. So you can get photos of the property. Fourth paragraph, he wants cash and is not open to financing. Well, maybe that's the disqualifying part of the whole conversation, because if maybe you only buy with terms. If that's the only way you buy and someone only wants cash, thank you. Have a good day. If you know anybody looking to sell their house on terms, let them know about me. What's happened in this conversation, I believe, is there's a power exchange that happens between a buyer and a seller. The buyer must always be in control because we are the problem solver. The moment you relinquish that power to the seller and give them control of the conversation, then they dictate everything that they will do for you. And by them saying, I'm only going to sell it for cash and I'm not open, well, that's them dictating terms to you. And no, they don't get to. They do not get to. They do not get to continue speaking to me in that tone. They can go speak to somebody else that wants to talk to them about that. I'm not doing it if my only way of buying is with terms. And it's a friggin' inherited house with no loans, liens, or mortgages. Okay? So let's communicate. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I understand that you only want cash and you're not open to financing. How long have you been trying to sell this property? Remind me of that. Oh, you've been trying to sell this so far now through 2 appraisals and 2 opportunities that fell out. So it probably at least 6 months now. So if over the next 6 months you can have your money and your house sold, would that be a good thing for you? Yes, it would be terrific. Here's how I can do that for you. And then just give them the seller finance option. Because selling it to you taking charge of the transaction as long as it makes economic sense, would probably get their money to them faster, even as a seller carryback, than it would be to wait for a cash buyer. Hope that made sense if I said that correctly. So sometimes we have to present to the seller the realization that them holding this property, them waiting for this, quote unquote, perfect buyer is going to cost them time and resource, and they would have a quicker result if they took my offer and allowed me to do what I need to do with it, and then ultimately paid them back their carryback. So just because someone says they don't want to doesn't mean we should stop. At that point, we should continue finding out how we can solve their problem. 5th paragraph. I see that you have 2 ways of doing it. One is offer competitive price? No, it's not a competitive price. Competitive prices mean that it's good for you, competitive for you, that you can go and do something with it now. And you should never get in a bidding war with another investor, meaning so-and-so said they would give you this, and so you're going to try to give them $1 more, and then they're going to give them $2 more, and then you're going to give them $3 more kind of thing. No, don't do that. Be happy that an investor succeeded and go buy the house that they couldn't buy because they just bought this one. Don't let our industry fight amongst ourselves and cause the sellers to have a false sense of security and overvalue property. Stop and say, hey, if Billy Bob is buying the house and you've got an offer from Billy Bob, let Billy Bob buy it because you're going to buy the house that Billy Bob can't buy because he's buying this one. Just understand that's how it works. Don't get all excited and emotional that Billy Bob's buying a house that you had the opportunity to negotiate. If you can't get it, you can't get it, go on. Now, option 2, make a more realistic offer. I think that's appropriate. You don't have to consider repair costs as an as-is because you have appraisals that are supporting an as-is. But what I would do here, because here's what I know. Just like this person has realized it twice so far, it looks like, escrows fall out. Closings stop because something happens. And most of the time, the investors that are overvaluing property to get a contract can't perform. And so that seller, in most occasions, has gotten super excited about selling, and they can't sell now because the person that said they were going to buy couldn't buy it at that value. They just didn't know it, or they knew it and they were thinking something different. So stay in contact with that seller. Follow up. Hey, last week you said you had it sold. Do you still have it sold? 2 weeks ago you said you had it sold. Do you still have it sold? 3 weeks ago, a month ago, it fell out. Oh my goodness gracious. Would you like to have a realistic offer, one that will actually close, so you can go ahead and consider your house sold, not only sold, but sold to somebody who can afford to buy it? Who's not going to play games with you and string you along? Oh, you would? Great. Here is my offer. Remember that offer I gave you before? It's now lower. Oh, you should have taken it before. Values have gone down. There's 3 more foreclosures in the neighborhood. Whatever it is, if negotiate. Make them an offer. 6th little paragraph, I'm siding with option 2. I would too. Those were my suggestions. Hope they made sense. I know it's probably all over the board for some folks. Heck, I was probably all over the board for myself. But anyway, this was a fun question. Remember, send them in if you have them. I will try my best to answer them and piece by piece give you my opinion. Again, that's all this is my opinion. Someone else will tell you to do it a different way, I'm sure. Here's the way that I want you to do it all the time, in a fashion that causes you to make money. And the amount of money is dependent upon your business model. So if, in this case, if it's $16,000, the 96 from the 80, if that was within your business model, I guess I can't argue with it. It just seems like a slim itty-bitty deal to me, because by the time you figure the marketing that it costs you and the closing costs that it's going to cost you and the resale costs that it's going to cost you and the holding costs that it's going to cost you, that $16,000 is going to go away really quick. With all that said, guys and gals, let me bring up this point. If you can buy it for 80, it appraised for 96, and it makes $7,000 a month in income because it's in a special location or something, or something that's going to happen that no one else does, well, yeah, maybe it makes sense then. And I was kidding about the 7,000. I was just using that as an example. But there are sometimes that in a situation where you can, obviously the spread, if you're a passive income earner, the equity base isn't what you're looking for. You're looking for return on investment and what you're going to make from that investment on a monthly basis. And in a situation where maybe this one qualifies, I don't know. I doubt it. I would still want to look at both personally. I would want to look at an equity base in case I needed to sell it, and I'd like to, if I was a passive income earner, at the same time, I'd like to look at the monthly income, net income. And please don't ever figure taxes into your income strategy, but some people do on passive. I've had fun. Talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show. Get more info and stay in touch at michaelquarles.com.